A lot of dirt and grime, psychologically and spiritually, that you have yet to clean up. Because we are very good at distracting ourselves from the subconscious and unconscious problems. We go from one information overload to the next. Notice how silence makes us so uncomfortable. You ever notice that? Have you ever tried to sit for 20 minutes in pure silence? I still feel like I'm going crazy sitting in silence sometimes. You know why? Because a lot of shit rises to the surface. Shit that I don't want to think about. Shit that I thought I was over. Nope, I ain't over it. It's not even about I. It's about the inconvenient truth. You know what? You want to hear the fucking inconvenient truth of it all that I think is the case, and I wish it wasn't. I really, really, really wish it wasn't. This is the fucking inconvenient truth. When we're hurt by people we care about, in whatever way that you can imagine, that shit that shit invades us way more than we even imagine, I think. I literally did a yoga position yesterday and I started crying. I did this thing when I went like this and something released. And it was thoughtless. I don't even know what it was that was built up back there. What kind of fucking tension was going on? What kind of memory was stored? I don't know what was happening, but I was just like, and then it went away. It's like a flash flood of tears, and then it went away. I was like, shit, what's that about? I don't know. Could it be possible that trauma, that pain, it stores itself in ways that are way more complicated than we even want to believe? And let's say maybe it wasn't some kind of emotional reason. Still, what the fuck is going on with the body where we're that tight? That tension is such where when you release it, it's such a profound release. Ain't that fucking crazy? I mean, I've seen it with chiropractors. I used to, my choice of ASMR would often be chiropractic videos back in the day. And there would be some chiropractic moments where people would get super emotional. Shit clearly gets stored in ways that we're not comfortable with talking about, or that we think is a bit woo-woo. I'm super skeptical of the fucking woo-woo. I don't want to believe in anything that doesn't make sense. But I have no choice but to acknowledge the evidence and my own furthering of my quote-unquote intuitive yoga, of my meditation, of my self-investigation. I have to fucking admit that there's something there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to cleaning our houses, the temple that's our body, the storage unit that's our fucking mind and soul. It's actually perhaps a bit more of an upheaval than I even imagined. And it makes me sort of see how people are so clueless and how they're such assholes and mean-spirited and bigoted and impatient and grumpy and self-righteous without any good reason except for their ego. How we're so insecure. Because it takes a lot of fucking work to have harmony inside of you. And that's why we're always running away from dealing with it. Unconsciously running away from it. There's that Yeats quote, man. Yeats or Yeats, not sure how you pronounce his name, but he said, it stuck with me. It stuck with me, man, and I think it's true. It takes more courage for a man to examine the dark corners of his soul than it does for a soldier to fight on the battlefield. I know somebody's saying, fuck you, you go fight on the battlefield and see how much courage it takes. Look, here's the thing. The reason why the spirit of that quote is, there is massive truth in it, is because the evidence is just there. Who the fuck do you know? Tell me, seriously. What individual do you know in your life, or individuals, really tries to check themselves? Who the fuck do you know that really tries to examine the dark corners of their soul? I mean, with just 100% honesty, without making great assumptions about this, about that, trying to construe it to their favor, but just head on acknowledges that they're a piece of shit. And they take that cold bath bravely, as W.E.B. Du Bois once told his daughter in that beautiful letter. Take the cold bath bravely, bravely, master yourself. Beautiful fucking words. Who do you know that does that? And it's not a competition. It's not about, I do it, I know Sarah does it, I know John does it, I know I do it, I'm better, right? So that means I win. It's not about that shit. What I'm saying is that the reason why you don't see it, the reason why even after years of my own pursuits and attempts to delve within and become a more unified and honest, authentic person, it's hard as fuck. It's so hard. It's so uncomfortable. And it can be very painful even. It does take a lot of courage. But on the other side of it, the difference between that and obviously fighting on the battlefield is that you got to be honest. That, like, I have to be honest with myself. One thing that helps me to examine the dark corners of my soul is that no matter how uncomfortable and painful it is, I'm still intact when I come out on the other side of that. And I can have faith. I can have 100% faith that I will be. That's one element of it that enables me to do it consistently. I got to be honest about that. Like, it's hard, but it won't kill you. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to give you gangrene. It's not going to put a bullet hole in you. You know, obviously you could say, yeah, maybe if you get depressed. Look, man, that's why it needs to be holistic. That's why you have to contemplate and acknowledge all kinds of factors. First, ask yourself, is life worth living? Is it? And then say, why? And then after you get your answer, then go to the next subjects, the next topics. I'm in this thing called a human body. I am this thing called a human. What does this thing need? Well, gotta get your rest, gotta get your nourishment, some form of physical activity. And there's this ability a human has called communication, called language. It's very complex, but it's also, despite how many words we have and how smart we are, it's very imprecise. It's imprecise. You see, when you get to the serious subject, you see how imprecise language is. Because you constantly have to tell people to define shit. I can't have a conversation with people about serious top religion, love, health, whatever. I have to constantly request that, hey, can you define that for me? Because my definition of health is going to be a little bit different from yours. My definition of spirituality is going to be probably drastically different from yours. My definition of happiness will be different. And so we have to to deal with the nuance of it all. And what humans are showing, especially with our current president, is that we are highly averse to nuance. We don't have the mental stamina to deal with that shit. Nuance, we're like allergic to it. That's too much thinking. I've had people tell me before. I've had a motherfucker tell me, yeah, man, you read too much. He was dead serious. Dead serious. I was talking with him. I guess you could say it was a civil debate about his religious beliefs. And he told me I read too much. He told me I read too many books. The suggestion being that man-made books don't have the appropriate wisdom, but his particular book did. Even though obviously his is man-made as well, but from his view, it was inspired by something supreme. But and I've had another person tell me, that logical shit out of here. Too logical. Too philosophical. We try to dismiss logic and reason. When that happens, a feeling of hopelessness sort of washes over me. But what fills me with hope again is realizing that there's multiple ways to go about this. A lot of people don't have any receptivity to someone who's strictly reasonable. I remember I did. When I was first trying to become more evolved and see things more clearly, the intellectuals, there's a one or two that they're strictly just dispassionately reasonable. And that's what I needed. I just want to hear the sense of it all, without the filler, without all the talking like this and trying to get me going. I want to just hear, what the fuck are you, like, just give me the rhyme and reason about why you think this is this and why you think this is that. Everything else, with the passion and the confidence, that's good. That's fine for different times and for different sort of edifications. It's just, I think when you really want to figure some shit out, just give me the cold, hard logic. Like with conflict resolution, I'm a big fan of dispassionate conflict resolution. And my brother Eric had refined that for me. He put it in those words, dispassionate for conflict resolution, because there was a major misunderstanding in the past with me and just basically everybody. When in my mid-20s, when I first set out to be less emotional, because I'm highly susceptible to being emotional. And by that I mean my anger can prevent my clarity. It can very much so obstruct my reasonability, my logic. My love can do that. My anger can do that. My sadness can do it. And just any emotion. It's just explosive and it can be overwhelming. But in my mid-20s, I saw that it wasn't doing me any favors. Like, I'm a big fan of passion, and I'm glad that I love that emotions have a volcanic place in me, to be honest. It makes me feel alive at times, and I'm not ashamed of it. But it was very much so obstructing my ability to communicate. And so when I would frame my desire to be less emotional by saying, like, I don't want to be a tool for my emotions. I want my emotions to be a tool. I want to be dispassionate or emotionless. Some people would interpret that as I want to be a robot. Like, that's not a. You want to be some soulless motherfucker. And I get that apprehension and I get that fear. Some people would even think that, like, if you go down that route, it's going to be a permanent thing. inside you, like a permanent personality change. But I've noticed that I don't know if you can change. Like, I don't know if I can ever take away my passion. Like, it might go away on its own, but my passion is always going to be there. It's just now I have more strategies. I have more intellectual tools. I have developed better ways of let's say, coexisting with my emotions. But if it's not about, because the fear also is like, it is unhealthy as fuck to just try to push them down. You know, we always, an example also that my brother used, which I agree with, is that some people do this like, I'm calm. What? I'm calm. You're loud. I'm not saying anything. I'm not raising my voice. You know, it's clearly just you're destabilized as well. Like, gotta be honest about it. Like, now, for example, if I'm super angry and I'm still trying to, I'm hell bent on communicating, the appearance of it would then be, look, I'm so fucking angry right now, but listen to me. This is what I'm saying. I'm saying that blah 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 blah. And it's not that I'm not feeling my anger, but rather I'm trying to distribute all of my internal resources to making my point, to finding my words, to illustrating and bringing clarity to what I'm saying. When you put all of your attention, I guess that's what it really is. You can find out that you can, despite whatever's happening, you can place all of your attention on a particular kind of objective. And I mean, this is similar to, like, I would imagine, you know, public speaking stuff. There's a lot of people, I just heard this clip of, is his name? I think his name is Bill Hader, the guy from SNL, the guy who plays Barry in that show, which I haven't seen, but one day I'll see. He's talking about how, like, he'd be just absurdly nervous before a lot of his SNL sketches, like just crazy nervous, right? And I'm like, he might be more nervous than a normal person ever even dreamed of being nervous. But it doesn't matter how nervous he is, because he still puts all of his energy into doing the sketch, into saying his lines, into being in that moment. So it's like, it's not about trying to suffocate the feelings of nervousness or anxiety or anger or whatever. It's not about trying to act like they don't exist. I think being honest about them is the healthiest thing to do. But it's about also learning how to do something despite the tension, despite the noise, the background noise. Putting all of your attention and all of your energy into a particular kind of objective, despite all the obstructive sensations that might be happening. And I find, for myself, I can't speak to the nervousness of doing a skit in front of a live audience, but I'll just speak to what happens when I might feel anger, disappointment, sadness, hurt. I find that when I put all of my attention and energy into explaining myself whilst feeling what I'm feeling, the anger, the hurt, the sadness, whatever, it tends to evaporate very quickly. Because what we usually do is we're just sort of wallowing in the sadness, wallowing in the anger, wallowing in our self-pity, in our insecurity, in our proudness, in our arrogance. Our attention is not on a particular kind of objective, like making a point in building a bridge between you and the other. Instead, when we feel anger and what have you, it overwhelms us because we then identify with it as if it is us. One thing I did learn, and I do believe to be true, is that just because you feel anger doesn't mean you are anger. Just because you feel sadness doesn't mean that you necessarily are the sadness. I'm not saying, I've been like, movies like Inside Out and stuff. I'm glad they legitimize feelings of sadness and stuff. And I think we all would be better off if we let ourselves sort of, what I call, turn into the skid and just feel that sadness, feel that emptiness, feel that disappointment. And 100%, if it's chronic, then that's a problem. But turning into the skid, it's so counterintuitive, but it seems to work. It's like the psychological, spiritual immune system kicks in, and it's like, okay, thank you for acknowledging it. Thank you for stepping into it 100%, moving on. So there's two ways to go about it, I guess. When you're by yourself and feeling what you're feeling, and you don't have a point to make to another person, then 100% just dive into your emotions. Just just pay attention to them, but just know that you aren't necessarily them. One example is if somebody just bullshits you, right? If somebody tells you, is trying to prank you, and this is a messed up prank, but they're like, hey man, just saw your girl, she was all over this dude, this random guy, and you'd be infuriated, right? But then imagine that this person then said, nah, I'm just kidding. Then either your anger might go away and there might be relief there. Then your anger would maybe adjust to the person over the phone. But in many cases, I believe that it would go away. And let's say if this person was known for being a dick and doing this, she was like, oh God, why'd you shut the hell up? Just notice how quick your anger goes away. And my point is that, like, your anger is not as profound as you think it is, because you were just angry at something that wasn't true. And so that's just good evidence of that. Your anger is not necessarily always justified merely because you feel it. A lot of times our anger, our annoyance, our aggravation, our indignation, just because you feel it doesn't mean that it's supremely meaningful. It doesn't mean that it would be appropriate if that was true, that your girl was doing that. But my point is that it could also be, it could be stirred it could be stirred just because you're hungry. You can have low blood sugar, have not eaten in several hours, and be very angry, and your anger feels so right, and you'll let it affect other people, which is no good. I'm not saying your feelings aren't legitimate. I'm saying that it's a case-by-case basis, and that when it comes to the conflict resolution of it all, if there's an issue between me and you, there needs to be a priority, a greater objective, despite the anger, the disappointment, the sadness, to understand the other person's point of view, to understand my point of view, and then from there to see where you go. I guess it's similar to how it goes in the courtroom, to be honest. Except less subject to corruption. But attaining harmony within yourself is it's a battle, it's a fight, it's a conquest. Like my man Russell talks about, the conquest of happiness. It was 100% an ongoing fight. And I've accepted that. I've accepted that to be a stable human being, it's going to be a fight. No matter how many times you achieve stability and internal harmony, and you feel edified, enlightened, evolved, you're constantly subject to deterioration, to decay, to losing that. And you have to have strategies to rebound and get it back. And that sounds inconvenient as hell because we want some silver bullet. We want it to be like a light switch. We want a change that's powerful enough that we don't then have to make conscious decisions anymore. But just imagine that in the context of a world that's just super fucking unfair. And imagine how spoiled we are that that's our feeling. That, man, finding harmony is so hard because I keep having to get harmony again. I keep having to chase it and to use a lot of mental energy to achieve it. Yeah, it feels good, but damn, it shouldn't be this hard. For us to say it shouldn't have to be this way. It shouldn't have to be that way. We're spoiled as fuck. A part of maturing and evolving is recognizing what is. I agree that a lot of things shouldn't be this, shouldn't be that. But I'm talking about the stuff we can't control. And if it's just a fact that you have to fight constantly for your stability, unless you found a way where you don't have to, that's great. If you found a way, please share it with everybody and let them know. But until then, it's going to be the fight for your sleep, the fight for your nourishment, the fight for your physical activity, and the fight for you to have conversations with people in a healthy way where you're transparent and authentic and you're trying to build a bridge between you and the other. Unfortunately, it's not so convenient to be a stable, mindful, authentic person. This world is a bit incompatible. Our society in America in particular is a bit incompatible with authenticity and genuineness. You see a lot of there's a lot of pushback with that. There's a lot of enemies, you can say, of genuineness and sincerity and intellectuality even. And that make it hard. I get it. But if that's the case, then that's the case. And so I guess you have to decide, is it worth it? And for me, not only is it worth it, but I don't know what other choice I have. So, hey, it could always be way more, way worse. The worst thing in your life is that people are generally assholes, inconsiderate, mindless, zombified. We are fortunate. Because look at history. It's basically fucking Game of Thrones without the dragons.